good shepherd. It's a very meaningful image. When I was a newly ordained priest, I helped out at a parish in West Oakland, which was a very poor area of Oakland, and it was a completely African-American neighborhood. There was a grandma, Rita Rowantree, who was our neighbor, and she would protect us from any of the neighborhood thugs who might want to, give us any trouble. So I have a lot of affection for that parish. But I remembered on Good Shepherd Sunday celebrating that in this inner city neighborhood, and I thought, how are these people going to relate to a shepherd? There was no shepherds in West Oakland. But I think even though most of us I'm not aware of any shepherds in the parish, but yet I think that somehow that image of the Good Shepherd, the lost sheep, Jesus seeking out the lost sheep, putting it over his shoulders and carrying it back to the flock, I think still there's a resonance there, and it speaks to us. When Jesus says, I am the Good Shepherd, I know my sheep and mine know me. And this is what I want to really key in on. My sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me. And, one of our parishioners gave me a book about shepherds in Australia and New Zealand and different places in the Holy Land. And it's really true that the sheep do recognize the voice of their shepherd, and they'll follow only the shepherd's voice. They won't follow other voices. And right now what strikes me is there are so many voices out there, more than ever, with social media, cable news networks, and the culture wars. There's just so many voices, too many voices, if you ask me. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. Who's old enough to remember Walter Cronkite? Okay, that's good. He was a popular news anchor when there were only 3 major news networks, and there weren't any cable television channels. And remember how he used to close his show every day? He said, and that's the way it is, September 5th, 1955 or whatever it was. He just said, that's the way it is. And people believed him. People believed him. There weren't alternate realities back, and that wasn't that long ago. Was certainly within my lifetime. There weren't alternate realities as there are today. People generally agreed on the facts, at least. Maybe people, we still had different points of view, obviously different opinions, but I think people generally agreed on the facts. And I think it would be hard for someone like Walter Cronkite to get away with that today, just saying that's the way it is. And that's why I think, because of all these different cacophonous voices, external and internal, I think it's why it's so important for us to be guided by the voice of our Good Shepherd and to get sure guidance. And how do we hear the voice of our Good Shepherd? It's not easy. It really isn't, because there's all this noise out there. I think there's at least 2 ways I'd like to point out. One is to listen to our conscience, and the other is discernment of spirits. So our good shepherd speaks to us in the sanctuary of our hearts, through the voice of our conscience, as well as the various calls he speaks to us in the quiet of our hearts. So to hear God's voice within us, we need to quiet ourselves, and that can be difficult. We can be, so busy. It takes practice. It's important to take out time, ideally every day, to be quiet and pay attention to what's going on inside of us. St. Ignatius of Loyola gives good advice on how to distinguish the voice of the Good Shepherd from all the other voices out there and from in here. If we practice prayer and discernment, we start to tell whether something feels right or sounds right or not. We can kind of get that sense. Does this make sense? Is it right? Even small children and young people can tell whether something feels right or feels fishy or feels like a danger. kids can tell that. Kids can tell if something feels right. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu talks of experiencing God pressure within ourselves, within us, God calling us to maybe to do something that we need to pay attention to. St. Ignatius of Loyola talks about what gives us a sense of peace and a sense of rightness as opposed to a feeling of unease or inner turmoil or disturbance. On this Mother's Day, I think it's good to remember that it's our mothers and also fathers too, and grandparents and teachers and others who help instill that sense of prayer and listening to our inner voice. I remember how my mother taught me how to pray when I was a very little child. She and I knelt together at my bedside, and she taught me the guardian angel prayer. But she encouraged me to have some spontaneous prayer. She encouraged me to listen to my heart. Parents, one way to help your children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews or students to learn to listen to their inner voice is to ask them to share maybe before or after meals or in the evening before they go to bed, what they're grateful for from the day. Just, what are they really grateful? What made them happy? What gave them life? And by teaching them to pay attention to what gives them joy versus what makes them sad, you teach them to listen to God's voice within them and to follow that voice. And that's a great favor you can do for your children. So they're not going to just, especially as teenagers, they're not going to just follow the crowd. But if their peers are calling them to do something that doesn't feel right, hopefully they'll have the strength to say no to that. No, that's not right. That's against my values. And we can teach ourselves to do this, but again, it takes practice. And this is really what the Sermon of Spirits means. So on this Mother's Day and on this Good Shepherd Sunday, let us give thanks for our mothers who gave us the gift of life, and let us give thanks for our Good Shepherd who guides us on our pathway through life. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.